All right, today is really cool because the person I'm about to introduce is a native of Australia, a recent March Madness participant, the reigning Big West Conference Player of the Year, and Big West Tournament Most Valuable Player. And on April 11th, she became just the second player from the University of Hawai'i to have her name called on WNBA Draft Day. So I'm talking about, of course, Amy Atwell. Amy, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
This is really exciting. So first of all, how are you doing in this new stage of your career so far?
Yeah, it's been very exciting and overwhelming at the same time, but kind of just a great experience all around. It was pretty rushed process as soon as I got drafted. It was like 2 days later I was flying out to LA, and I've been in training camp the last 4 days now. So it's kind of been go, but definitely good side, yeah.
Yeah, I bet. So on draft night, what was that like for you and your family? I mean, were you expecting to have your name called? Was it just kind of like anxiously awaiting the whole time?
Yeah, so I had a good idea. I kind of had been speaking to my agent a couple weeks leading up to it, and we're like, it's a possibility. And then it was like the morning of, and he was like, just make sure you're watching. He said he was pretty confident that it could happen like early third round. So I had an idea that I could have gone, but it still was kind of sitting there like, could happen, could not. So definitely was anxious, yeah.
Was your family alongside you the whole time?
No, so my family was back in Australia. Obviously, so I was with a few of my teammates and my good friends. We were all watching it together. My sister and my dad were actually watching it as well back in Australia. My sister was kind of texting me the whole time, but yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. That had to be a crazy moment, and obviously something really happy too.
Yeah, definitely. It's a crazy moment, but yeah.
Yeah, I bet. So as you know, with me, I actually watched you play in Santa Barbara way back in like early 2020 before the pandemic even hit. And then the next thing I knew, you're like this unstoppable force in 2022. So, I mean, the pandemic was a pretty terrible time for most people, but at least between the beginning and the end, you had just upped your game to a new kind of level. What parts of your game do you feel like you focused the most on during those 2 years?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think COVID kind of gave us all a good chance to reset and gave us all a lot more time than we thought we were going to have. Definitely took advantage of that. But in terms of parts of my game, it was really my conditioning and my strength that I kind of focused on. I always was kind of a good shooter, but it was like when I got tired, I kind of started to lose that stuff, and definitely working off the ball stuff as well, and off the dribble action. But it was, I think the biggest like turning point was was my conditioning. Just being able to kind of go. And like, even when I did get tired, my shot was still consistent.
Yeah, I mean, finding ways to score in all four quarters. It's still interesting to me covering both men's and women's basketball, the difference between the halves and the quarters and all those adjustments. But were you still in college when it was halves in women's basketball?
No, that was the year before I came in, actually. So,
okay,
which was kind of good because I wasn't too keen on playing halves. When I found out it was still halves, I was like, wait, what? Because I hadn't played halves pretty much all my life except for like social club basketball growing up. But yeah.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I like the quarters better too, and especially with being able to advance the ball off a timeout at the end of the game.
Definitely.
I think if they changed that rule in men's basketball, it would make that tournament more exciting as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, so you come back to Hawaii for one more year as a graduate. Obviously, COVID not only opportunity to reset, but gave everyone an extra year if they wanted that option. And your goal was to make it to March Madness. So what everyone is going to remember ultimately is that it happened and you did reach the top of that mountain. But what some of us might forget, and I'm bringing this up because I was watching it right on the sideline at the media table, is that it was almost as over as soon as it started, because that quarterfinal matchup against Cal State Bakersfield came down to that final possession. So in that game, was there any part of you thinking, hey, this might be my final moment in college basketball? Or were you just pushing that all to the side, like just win and forget about it?
looking back on it, I was kind of like, wow, that was a lot closer than I thought. And it was a moment where I looked up at the scoreboard and I think we're down by 4 with like 2.5 minutes left. And I was like, oh, wow, we really might lose this game. And that was kind of the first time it hit me because the game was kind of close all the way through, but I was always pretty confident we were going to run away with it. And then it was like down by 4, 2 minutes left. And I was like, oh, this is not great. I didn't lose confidence. I kind of knew we had it in us to pull it out, but we hadn't been playing great basketball and I hadn't been having a great game either. So it wasn't like I could just step up and kind of hit some shots down because I wasn't really feeling it either. But I mean, yeah, I always think winning does require a little bit of luck sometimes too. And we definitely got lucky then on that night. And it could have been a completely different story if it didn't go our way that night. Yeah.
Do you think that had you lost that game, it would have made a difference come draft day? I know that's really hard to say one way or another, but sometimes winning and getting on that next national stage can really do a lot for a player.
Oh yeah, definitely. I definitely think it would have affected it. I probably potentially would not have got drafted. I think what put me on a lot of WNBA clubs' radar was my Baylor game. Being able to perform like that and shoot like that over the number 2 draft pick and kind of like perform on a national stage like that. There was definitely more scouts and definitely more people watching. So I for sure think that had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's great to hear. And for your sake, I'm glad you made it. Being the Santa Barbara media team, we were going to play you guys had we won that quarterfinal matchup. And so a lot of people were sitting there at the end of the Bakersfield game like, is this really going to happen? But you know what? Like, I really think the Big West, though, was very tightly packed this year. Like, it was so much intense competition. And since you were in the conference for so long, do you feel like the competition had just gotten better over the years of which you were there?
Oh, definitely. I think especially this last year was a lot closer because, I mean, the 4 or 5 years before that, during regular season anyway, it had kind of been Davis that ran away with it. And they were finishing 4 or 5 games clear on top of the ladder, and there was a big jump between first and second, and then even kind of going down. So I definitely think this last year was probably the most competitive it's been in a while. And like you said, it was like, that game was 1 versus 9 seed, and it was a 1-point game in the end or something like that. So it kind of just goes to show that there was like such a big, it was a very highly competitive conference this year.
Yeah, and then not to mention Davis, who was kind of that top team for the last 5 years. They almost made a run. I think 1 shot away from getting to the championship game against Irvine. That was crazy.
Yeah.
Being a UCSB guy, we had in fact defeated you guys once, split with you, and then you got a team like Fullerton, who was like, one of the lower teams in the conference, but that's a team that we went to overtime with. And Lily Wahine Kopp, who's just a great player, and now she's going over to your side of it in Hawaii.
Sure is. Yeah, no, we were super excited about that one. She's going to be really great for them, and I'm excited to see kind of what they do next year and how she goes.
Yeah, I saw that on Twitter and was just like, well, okay, I guess they're staying good. So
yeah, well, I mean, hopefully Hawaii can kind of stay good. I mean, stay up there for the next couple of years. I think we've always, ever since I've been here, we've always kind of been mid-pack, like 4, 5, 6-ish. Made the championship game once my redshirt sophomore year, but we've kind of hadn't been able to break through that like 1-2 spot. So hopefully now that we have, they can stay up there.
When that final buzzer rang against UC Irvine, was that moment everything you expected or just something entirely different? Like, how did that feel?
I'm not sure I kind of had expectations for it. It was kind of almost a bit surreal when the final siren went off. I was like, I kind of just sat there and was like, oh, wow, that just happened. And I don't think I was like, it kind of didn't hit me like I thought it would. Just because it was so like, I don't know, that whole tournament was very like weird for me. I think just like starting with the first Bakersfield game and then the Riverside semifinal, but it was more like it took a while for it to set in. Definitely.
Yeah, I bet. I was watching the victory press conference both with your coach and then you and I think it was Deja Phillips. But just I could see a lot of relief and just a lot of coming down from something really intense and emotional. And I can imagine, I mean, just being a spectator on the side and calling it on a broadcast, I felt so locked into it all. I can't imagine what it would be like to be on the court, going through it, exhaustion, just mentally, physically
Yeah.
pushing your limits.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it was coming back this for my last year, it was kind of like that was always what I had wanted to do. That's what I set out to do from the start. Like I always said that I came back for conference championship, and kind of to finally achieve that and just kind of sit there and soak it in. I was like, wow.
Yeah, no doubt. So now moving toward more of the present, and you mentioned you flew out to LA, you've been going through training camp. Have you gotten the chance to interact with your new teammates a lot, besides just basketball side of it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're with each other for majority of the morning. We have a 8 to 1 p.m. time slot every day, so we're all kind of getting in there early, stretching out, getting ready, getting some shots up, and kind of just learning each other's dynamic off the court as well. But it's been a super cool experience already, just to kind of soak in that knowledge and all that experience from the older girls that have been playing in the league a while and have that experience.
Do you feel like there's anyone in particular you've really looked up to in terms of their game and like where you're trying to get in the next few years?
Not really. I personally have never really had that one person that I'm like, oh my God, like they're my role model. I've watched them growing up. Obviously I had those players that I loved their game, but I was kind of a fan of a lot of people, and I never was one of those kids that was like, I want to be like them. I want to be like them. I kind of just wanted to be like me and always looked up to those people. But yeah,
There's only one Amy Atwell.
exactly.
I love it. So yeah, this is where I gotta give the full shout out to Lauren Cox, your teammate, because coming out of Baylor, she is type 1 diabetic, and I'm type 1 diabetic as well. So yeah, big fan of Lauren Cox, but now I can have two favorite LA Sparks. So if there was no doubt about which WNBA team I cared about the most, it's fully set in stone for the moment. And so that's a lot of fun. You know, I'm just looking through the roster too, and just so many of these players I've followed for a long time. Even Kiana Smith, who was at Louisville, my parents both went to Cal, and she transferred from Cal. So just a lot of familiar names. It's kind of funny to see what a small world it really is.
Yeah.
As you go into your rookie season, do you have any goals that you're setting for yourself, or have you just not really thought that far yet?
I really haven't thought that far yet, and I don't think I'll kind of get there in terms of like setting goals of what I want to achieve. I think this first year especially, I want to keep growing my game as much as I can, and I want to learn as much as I can from all these great people I'm surrounded by. Like Derek Fisher's my head coach. That doesn't happen every day. And he's a legend, and just kind of getting to interact with him and learn from him for 4 hours every day is just kind of a whole advantage in itself. But yeah, I just want to soak in as much as I can and really take in that experience.
Yeah, what does he know about the game of basketball anyway?
Right? Like nothing. No.
Yeah, like
he is just the way he sees the game, and just everything I've learned from him in like 4 days of camp already is just kind of nuts.
No, it is kind of wild to think about players who were playing professionally for a long time, especially when you're in a great organization like he was and playing alongside one of the best players of all time.
Yeah.
Just how much you can learn, just, both in terms of X's and O's and by example and culture. And I really think that to have a combination of the two is exactly what you want as you're starting the next phase of your career.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, okay. I mean, I feel like the last question I have to ask you is, when are the Amy Atwell jerseys coming out?
Oh, I don't know about that. I think you have to stay posted for that. They still there's 20 girls currently on the roster, I think 20. And they cut it down to 12 in like 2 weeks before the season starts. So fingers crossed, I'm gonna keep putting my best foot forward and everything like that. But yeah, hopefully after that, yeah, I can get an Amy Atwell jersey coming out.
All right. Well, anyone listening to this, when I put this out, you have to stay tuned. I'm like pretty much going to mandate that if you're watching this, if you care enough to watch this, then you have to care enough to go get the jersey. That's kind of my rule here.
That's your rule. All of you, every single person that listens to this has to go buy the jersey.
Yeah, that's how it goes. All right. Well, I think that's really all I have, but just want to say congratulations. And it's been fantastic watching you for the last 2-3 years, and now getting to have your name called on draft day, represent Hawaii, represent the Big West, and just, not sure what's ahead, but I have no doubt it's going to be something amazing.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for the support. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, take care and appreciate it.